So, alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about the number line, using the number line, both closed and open number lines. So what Carrie and I kind of talked about is first of all, I guess we just wanted to ask you, please share with us what do you think your needs are in terms of number line work? What are you seeing in your classroom? How are the kids doing with the number line work you've done so far? What would help push your number line work forward? And then from there, we have
Everything.
yes, so it will help us
We
know.
went from first all the way up to fifth with
Yeah.
a major concentration on maybe like second and more. But then once we saw that there were a lot of first grade teachers, we were like, okay, we got to really now develop the closed number line to how it progresses to the open number line. But we really want to know, like, what are your goals for this work or coming to this stack, and what do you need to help support you
Yeah.
in using this model?
So anybody who feels like jumping in, please do.
Sure. For me, I know I'm doing unit 5 right now, which is addition strategies, and we are using the number line and open number line especially. And I feel like the hardest part for my students is when we're making jumps. So say like 20 plus 20 plus 7. It's when we get to like adding or jumping numbers that aren't friendly numbers is where I can see them get lost. So we kind of talked about making those numbers friendlier. So if it's jumping 7, well, we'll jump 5 and then add 2 more. But when it gets to like adding the double digits with those larger jumps, if it's, you know, 27 plus 42, that's where they kind of are getting lost when they have to go from the middle of a number line to an even like larger number. So any suggestions I would be grateful for.
Definitely. So we
Okay.
definitely have slides with that information. How about first grade? What are you guys thinking?
Katie and I are in the same room right now, by the way. Sorry if it's echoing. So we definitely use the number line a lot. That ends up being a way that a lot of the kids show their thinking and show their work, which is tricky because we provide them with a number line. We have the ones that are like double-sided from 0 to 10, and then we have the ones from 0 to 20. And so all the kids are on the 0 to 20 side now. We're doing a bunch of equations that ask them to either count on, count back, and they're really capable of doing that. But it's hard when that's their only strategy, and transferring that onto the paper. A lot of the kids then want to draw their own number line. And in first grade, it can be either really good or really bad, and they're all over the place with the numbers, lining them up with the lines. So it's a great tool that if they're given a concrete like number line, they can use it, they can hop forward, they can hop backwards, they understand that. And a lot of the kids actually, from my class at least, I don't find them skipping numbers or having to recount. Like they're really capable of following and tracking as they're using it. But it's when we ask them to then show their thinking. My question with number lines is, can we agree that using a number line is a strategy that is showing your thinking if they can't recreate it themselves, if they can only like verbally recreate that? So that was a conversation we talked about in our grade level meeting. And we said, yes, as developmental, like first graders, they can use that definitely as a source of how they end up sharing their thinking. But my question then is like moving on into other strategies. A lot of the kids want to always use number lines because it's just easier to them. So I wonder like what comes next if we're asking them to show their thinking on paper, but they're not actually drawing it or recreating it.
Well, you came to the right place. We had this huge conversation about the bridge from first to second grade and the bridge from closed to open number line, and how, to your point, developmentally. First of all, there's some kids who can't developmentally see the linear part of it, but the other part is even if they're seeing it and can use it to represent, they can't draw it themselves.
Right.
So how do you go from concrete to abstract? And we have a whole section on how that can be developed.
And in terms of their writing, I think that it's completely acceptable, right? That like if you've got a number line on the page and they can show the jumps, that's showing their thinking, showing their work. And then moving them, I think the gradual progression then is show your equation, right? So 3 + 7 = 10. And then as they move on, that's like you're building, right? So they're showing the jumps on the number line. Then they're showing the equation, and then they'll get to the point where they can either explain in a sentence like what they did, or right, like that's what we're trying to move them towards.
Right.
And I mean, obviously in 3rd and 4th grade, they're not writing 3 + 7 is 10 on the number line, but you can see how they're going from like that pictorial to concrete, and then to like the more abstract explanation.
And what's really interesting is that you're the crux in 1st grade of being able to use the tool as the representation that's static to a tool then by the end of 1st grade or 2nd year, a tool to think with. You're right in that spot of like sort of having it fuzzy on both. But I think to your point, what's really nice here is that if they're using counting on or counting back, those are the strategies. In 1st grade, it's the number line that represents their thinking. It's not a strategy. It's just representing however they're using it. So it's an interesting age to be at to use that model, both as a representation and then something to think with. And we'll get into that.
Right. And as they move on, right, when they get to 5th grade, they'll be doing it all over again when they're using it to show division, like division of fractions or a whole number divided by a fraction, or multiplication, right? They'll kind of almost, I don't want to say start over, right? But like now they're moving on to multiplication and division, and they'll be doing the same process.
Right, the unit goes from 1 to base 10 to then the unit could be a group of 3, or a unit could be like you're a third. So,
Exactly.
but you know, it's just that you're in 1st grade, it's that conundrum of the developmental place that they're at.
Katie, go ahead. I'm sorry. You wanted
I just wanted to share, I've something we've talked about. I'm sorry if there's an echo. Amanda and I, like she said, are in the same room. In the addition and subtraction units, we'll talk about addition first. There are some strategies where, like build a 10, or like adding part of one addend and then adding the other part. And the way that that's represented in the book in a pictorial way sort of looks like a number bond coming out of one of the addends. And I've really been trying to like highlight that connection to the number line. I think there's an opportunity there to show like part of one addend, like let's say it's like 7 + 5. Okay, breaking that 5 into 3 and 2. I think that visual is hard for kids, but I think if you show it on a number line and say, okay, I'm going to do a jump of 3 and a jump of 2, and then together that's a jump of 5. I've been trying to bring the number line into those conversations, because I think that inserting a number bond in an equation is like really abstract for this age group. But that's a way, I think, to like bring a higher level thinking to the number line, not just to help you be accurate counting on or counting back, but to like break one addend into parts and show it that way. Also, while I have you, I wonder, you had said, what do you need to help in this work? I'm using the same set of number lines from last year, the like dry erase ones, and a few of mine have ripped and they've just seen better days. I'm curious, do you happen to have another class set? I just think I should laminate them. They're like kind of shiny, but I think I should laminate them. If you have another set, I would love that.
those off to you. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And you'll see on our slides, we actually found a slide, we took a screenshot of the Reveal That Learn page, where they do this beautiful job of showing the number line with the number bond and the tens
and a
frame.
tens frame.
So
So again, concrete, pictorial, right? And then to the abstract. And I like what you're saying is we don't want it just to be a tool to count by ones with. We want them to, the beginning part of it is to either get to a landmark number or jump by a landmark number. So you using those number bonds and getting groups of numbers is the exact place that you should do it, still within the 5-10 structure of our number system. And we have a lot of slides to show you.
yes. All righty, should we get going?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So let's see, share. Alrighty, so forgive the mess here. I'm gonna just start by saying that.
Don't look at all the
Yeah,
tabs that she has open.
I know, it is very upsetting. And I've
Mm.
got it. Here we go. All right. Alrighty, everybody can see that, right? Okay, so that was really our question, right? Like, where do we begin? I just want to move this up here. There we go. Because we really wanted to understand where everybody was in terms of the work. So thank you for sharing that information with us to get started. And it's interesting to hear like how it's going for everybody
Yeah.
and where everyone is. Alrighty, so let's, why, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. So we thought it was important to start with just understanding the closed number line, right? Because that's where your kids are right now. If you're in first grade, still working with a closed number line. And our goal is to move them to where Alyssa is right now and beyond into open number lines. So obviously a very clear explanation of what a closed number line is. However, right, like it's this bottom piece where we need to start bridging. It limits their flexibility in problem solving, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the numbers end, right? Should
Yeah,
we
no, no,
move?
yeah, let's move because I think that, yeah.
Okay, so just quickly, we wanted to show you like, and we can share this with you, but when you're introducing the number line to kids, right? Like it's important for them to understand, like you were saying, that a number line can be used for addition, subtraction, and finding missing numbers.
I also would like to add to that, they technically, you don't have to write a plus or a minus because the number line is inherent. If kids know that to the right, the number is always increased by 1, and to the left, they get, they get smaller, then, and I know that some teachers really would like to put that plus or minus, but we want them to eventually understand that you move and it's distance. And that's why it's such a powerful model for addition, subtraction, division, and even integers and beyond. So there is that talk about directionality. They should know that no matter what direction they're going in implies something. It's not for me to say, meaning that you can't, some people need to put the plus or the minus, but it's something you want to work toward because you want to have that inherent understanding of a number line, because that's the way it is to infinity, both sides, forever and ever with our base 10 system.
So I was hoping to be able to show you the next slide
Oh, it won't open.
from this slideshow. And of course, like everything today, it will not cooperate. So I can show it to you from another place, but basically the part that we liked, that we really wanted you to see, I'm sure I can find it here in Canva,
There it is.
right, is that our goal is to get kids to, right? So here we are with understanding addition, subtraction, and missing numbers. But then, right, I can use it to do all that, what each point, like what the vocabulary is for the number line. Right, the directionality of the number line, that when I'm moving in one direction, the numbers get larger, the next direction smaller. Here it is for addition and subtraction. But then, right, this idea of finding a missing number. Right, so if I'm at 6 and I jump 1, what's the missing number? Or if I'm at 8 and I subtract 1, I move to 7. Have you, and you guys have been doing that work together, right? So, oh, and then this is just a joke of what do number lines and teachers have in common? You could count on them. Right, but I think the point is that we need to make sure that kids have that very basic understanding.
Before going to the open number line. So then we were thinking, where do you evolve from there? And one of the best routines or lessons you can do is, what do you notice, by just showing a closed number line versus an open number line, just to establish, well, there are no numbers on it. You could start anywhere. You don't see the increments by 1, and it's much more flexible. But it's just nice to have that conversation before you dive into using it. Have you had those conversations, those of you using open number line?
No. So that might be a really nice visual to put up and just start the discussion, right? So what do you notice, right? I see like these arrows with, I see the line with arrows on either end. One has numbers, one doesn't. Could we write in our own numbers? Does it matter what numbers we put in? How could, I think there are lots
There's a
of
lot.
questions and conversations that you can start, having with them that then can lead into some of that work.
Some of the number, Amanda was just remembering, some of the number routines for first grade have an open number line and like 3 points, and you put them
Right.
like values and you put them in
Perfect.
places that would make sense and talk about it that way.
It's funny because I was going to say one of the questions you can ask is, well, you know what, where would 39 go?
Right.
And some kids will be like, you can't. And other kids are like, well, maybe you can. So yeah, I'm glad that they're developing that in the number routines.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, right, it allows students to Carrie's point, right? It allows students to customize the scale and focus on specific numbers. And then of course can be used for a variety of operations. So what strategies do we use to get kids moving, right? Like we start with the familiar, simple problems on the closed number line that get more complex and larger numbers, right? You guys started talking about that, and then encouraging students to explain their thinking and how they're using it.
So very much to like what Alyssa was saying, like, getting to a landmark number or jumping by a landmark number. That's going to be, you want to use that 5-10 structure. So if you're at 7, do I have to say 8, 9, 10? No, if I know 7 plus 3 is 10, I can take that jump of 3, and that's okay.
Yeah, and what's nice is that the number routines and a lot of the models that you'll see on the Learn page highlight that kind of thinking, right? And give it as examples. So I think those are really valuable slides and models for you to use
Absolutely.
when you're working with kids, right? So model different strategies for solving problems, as Alyssa was saying. Use the open number line to visualize the jumps and compensation, and we've got some slides that show that. And encourage kids to experiment with different approaches. Of course, you want them to have opportunities for independent practice, discussions about the different strategies, and then connect open number lines to real world contexts, like where and when do we use that kind of system for doing the math that we need to do.
I would also say on that one, for some reason, and I don't know why, 10 frames or pictorials get a lot more story problems, or you use a story problem. Sometimes we get so caught up in using the model with the number line that you forget to put like the real world context to it.
Right.
Like it could be about the
Maps.
balloons that flew away. It could be, but I think that there's something about the context that also helps people visualize what's happening with the numbers.
Right. Even things like when incorporating something that looks like a number line into a picture, like a map, right? Or, a track or a distance or a length of some unit of length.
Or even cubes to go along with it. So, and we'll
like-
get into that later.
Yeah, in the art
Art show.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we kind of really talked about this a little bit already, but kids understand that numbers move in a line, right? That there's an order to them, and the number line allows them to pair that understanding to a visual. So a ruler, right, is another great example.
If you took that hundreds chart and stretched it out, because I think that it has great possibilities for patterning, but our number system doesn't go like this, like a snake. Right. That causes some problems too. So straightening that out and then realizing that it continues to infinity, that's going to be powerful for them up until high school.
Right. And a lot of you do have like a number line like around the walls of your room. So number lines promote creative solutions and strategies for reasoning. So definitely a powerful tool. right? So here is where we kind of jump a little bit to
Alyssa.
exactly Alyssa's question about adding larger numbers, right? And
Look
you,
at that. It's almost like you scripted it for us.
right? So here we are starting at a number that is not, I mean, it's friendly-ish, right?
Mm.
It's close to 40, but it is like in between. So if I started at 39 and I wanted to add 23 more, right? I would decompose the 23 into 10, 10, and then 3, right? So 39 and 10 more is 49, 49 and 10 more is 59. And then if I had to, I could count by ones, 1, 2, 3 to get to 62. It's that kind of thinking that we want kids to kind of show and display in their work. Is that the only way to break it up? It's not, right? Obviously, you could break it into 20 plus 3, and hopefully that's like where we want to get kids, right? To the fewest number of jumps possible.
I'd also say on that, what I like to do sometimes is get a second color. And if you do have that kid who jumped by the 20, put the larger ring, you know, from the 39
Right.
to the 59 and show that that's a 20, and then put a loop over the 3 to make it a 3 to say, oh, it's the same, we're getting there, but that's, you know, it's in less jumps and they took bigger jumps. And notice, like, you know, starting with jumping by a landmark number, that's going to be your go-to. And that, I would say, one of the things that could help develop that for kids who don't have it, doing count arounds by 10 for numbers, like, you know, starting at 13, let's count around by 10, because you can't do these things unless they know how to add, you know, count by 10 or more, or get to a 10. So that's why I keep saying base 10 system, jump to a landmark number or jump by a landmark number. That's what we want them to, in order for them to be able to use this model, they need that. If they don't have that, then they're counting by ones anyway.
And that's why the hundreds chart work is also really important. I know like there's been some change in the pacing, and it's moved kind of where we use the hundreds chart with like larger numbers, the larger hundreds chart. But having them understand how those numbers work can also really help with
Absolutely.
this number
The
line.
patterns in the number system, they go together, right? That's why they, you know, they flow together, these ideas.
So again, like we're talking about being flexible, right? So if we're adding 57 and 29, we can see here, right? They could skip jump forward by 30 instead of 29 and then go back one, just like we've taught kids to adjust numbers in second grade. They could show that adjustment on the number line.
And look at how less jumps there are. You could go 77 and go up by 9 jumps, or maybe break it into 5 and 4, but that gets a little bit messy. This is actually a really efficient way to do it. Again, if you know how to add 10 to any number, this is going to be really good for you. And then I just actually wanted to ask you something, Alyssa. You had said they have a hard time when they're at the middle of the number line. Is that because they feel like even though it's all open, they have to start in the middle and then they don't give themselves enough room? Like, you know, do they know that even if, you know, even though you have this whole number line and you're starting at 37, you could start all the way to the left? Or are they starting in the middle of it? Because that's sometimes kids, you know, kind of almost like they almost do a benchmark in their head, like, oh, well, I can't put the 37 or the 57 all the
Right,
way to
at
the
the
left.
beginning of
Oh, so we did talk about that, but like what I'm talking about is if I had, let's say like I had like a big number line and the beginning is, let's say like 27 and we go to 35 and then they have to add X amount more, like just very random. Like when it gets to here and they have to add on from like a random number that's not friendly, that's when they kind of get
Realize
lost.
how much room they needed, and then they squish it down and you can't read, and then it gets hard to use.
Yeah.
And I think what Carrie said before is like a really helpful tip, like practicing those count arounds and how to get to the next number or the next benchmark or the next friendly number is a way of just giving them not only the practice, but practicing their fluency
Right.
with number, which is also really important. And again, a great tool to use to help you do that. Right. So again, these are just more strategies for getting there, but you can see like there's more room for error. The more jumps they have to make, the more opportunities there are for error. So I think the goal is to do it in the fewest number of jumps possible so that but that also takes practice in decomposing in a way that allows for the fewest jumps and understanding if they are adjusting how to do it in a way that they can show on the number line.
And to your point too, was it who, Amanda, is like that they can't draw that well. Their
Right.
motor skills aren't there. So the more jumps you have to make, it's just, they lose track of the count. So, even in that term, like using it efficiently is having the least amount of jumps by friendly numbers.
Yeah. And that's something they have to grow into, right?
Mhm.
I think in first grade, I think that would be really uncommon, obviously. It's something we're trying to move them towards.
And developmentally, it's not really supposed to be introduced really until the end of first grade
Right.
as a tool to think with.
Right. So how many different ways, right? Like this is, you could show this to kids on, like on your own, like, you could draw it yourself. And what are the different ways we could do this work, right? We could start at 27 and make 5 jumps. We could start at 27 and make 2 jumps, right? Plus 3 plus 2. Is there another way? Like, I think showing those different ways is important. And then of course, like, is there a way to show it with just one jump? Right. But like, that's what is up here, right?
And we have it, what tends to happen is some kids, well, I jumped the whole 5. No, if you saying that, you probably did something in your head.
Right.
We
Exactly.
want the line to represent what they actually did and not just fit it in later, like do something like count on their fingers and then put it, right? So we want them to use it as a tool to think with. So, going back to the idea of, well, if I know that 7 plus 3 is 10, then I can get from 27 plus 3 to get to landmark of 30 and then add 5. That's what we want. And that, we want them to talk about that and use that to show how they did the thinking.
Yeah. Right. So, and then of course, these are all the different ways that they could do it. Right. And then here's like an opportunity for them to try it. And then right now, let's try it with different numbers, right? Here's 37 plus 6, right? I'm going to add 3 and then 3 more.
And look at that, when
Ideally.
you look at the first two, using 6 makes sense because it's a double, right? Hopefully kids, it can break apart that 6 into 3 and 3 and then use that as a friendly jump to get the landmark number. And then the use of the 8, again, a lot of people think of 8 as 5 and 3. How lovely is that if you take 5 and then you get to 70 and then you have 3 more. So when you're choosing your numbers, think about how they're going to be broken apart, what's going to, speak to students, and doubles or 5 facts are going to really be helpful when decomposing numbers.
So, and there,
Yeah, we have many.
right? And then of course,
Mm.
like, this is interesting, like in first grade, right? 99 plus 7, can they make that jump to, right? I'm going to decompose 7 into 1 and 6, right? To get to 100 and then 6 more. What does that look like? Then of course, right, there's subtraction as well. Having the appropriate vocabulary is important. But using a whiteboard, how could we show subtraction again with those same strategies that we just discussed for addition?
And just to look at this number string here, not only can you, once you're practice your counts by 10 forward, you could practice your counts backward by 10.
Right.
And that's going to assist with your subtraction. And the number line, I think, is while it's really powerful for addition, I think it's even more powerful for subtraction.
Right. And that's why understanding the directionality of the number line is so important for kids. What happens to numbers when we move in in one direction versus another. So, and just some practice there, right? What do you notice? What do you wonder, right? Like when we've got a big number like 19, are we really going to count back 19 times, right? Is there a more efficient way? Right, and then this is the number jump game. Can you jump from 0 to 29 using only jumps of 1, 10, or 100?
Take a moment to think about that. What do you think this game is forcing you to do? Why would you put those parameters on it?
I guess it gets you to like work on skip counting for sure. And then like logical reasoning in the sense that if you're only going to the number 29, would we even have to worry about counting by hundreds?
Right, or like like, so if I had to do it in a jump of 1, right? So 0 plus 29 is 29. I don't need to do like then 1, like count all the way up, right? But then like, what's another way I could break it up? So how could I break this 29?
Thinking
Right.
about your units of 1 and 10, and obviously, Alyssa said you can't use 100.
Right.
So what could you do?
So I could do, right, 10, 20, and then 9 more. So that's 3 jumps, right? What's another way to do it?
I was thinking, I was
no,
thinking about like, you asked like, what is this asking them to do? It like comes back to a lot of place value. But at my previous district, we also talked about a strategy called adjusting. Like you could do like 29 is close to 30. So do 3 jumps of 10 and jump back 1.
That's going to be the most efficient. So it's
Yeah.
3 jumps ahead and then 1 jump back, whereas the other one is 2 jumps of 10 and then 9 jumps of 1. Because of these parameters, when you're thinking about only the 1 and the 10, it makes you think, even if I go beyond the landmark, maybe that's more efficient to adjust and come back rather than going by 1. So it's a fantastic game about distance and using landmark numbers.
which is fantastic because as Alyssa knows, right, when they get to 2nd grade, adjusting numbers is a strategy that's encouraged and that kids are taught to use. So, right, kind of like front loading some of that thinking is super helpful to those 2nd grade students and 2nd grade teachers.
And some kids know inherently that, of course, you could go forward and then adjust back. Other kids need their permission. Some kids are like, no, you can't do that. Well, why not? You are always allowed to go beyond and come back. And that could be a little meaningless in our discussion. Some kids need the permission to know that you're allowed to go beyond the number to get back to it.
So right here, and here it is, right? Like you can see going forward 3 and coming back 1. All righty. So I just want to keep going. Where, what was we wanted to
Yeah.
get to, so where is the number line in reveal? Right? So in grade 1, here we see, right, exactly what we've been talking about, right? Right now using just counting by ones as the strategy. But also representing it with cubes, right? So that kids can see both ways of doing it.
Right. So the pictures are they're pictorial, but they're not concrete, but they could have them, the blocks with them. But sometimes they don't see the connection. What I'm pointing is, if you're going to see me, the connection between the blocks or the counters and the open number line. And sometimes you might have to actually put a block or a counter
Right on
above,
top,
right
yeah.
on top to show them what it is.
Absolutely. Right. And then of course we see here, right now, they're not like, at first they were modeling the jumps. Now they're saying, okay, now you do it to find the unknown, right? 3 plus how many equals 9? How many jumps would I have to make to get to 9? Right. This is obviously having 3 addends, 4 plus 6 plus 4, right? And that no matter how I arrange the addends, right, I will always get the same number.
So then you're
Right,
going into
talking
the
about the
commutative property, and
yeah.
and it's just lovely to see it in that venue.
And I think this is what Katie was talking about, right? Seeing the number line with the doubles next to them, and then here this number bond broken apart to show the addition.
And you could even put that on a tens frame too, because that's
Yep.
another familiar model that they would understand. And what, how do you get to that 10?
Right, absolutely. But, right, kind of maximizing the work you've been doing
Mhm.
with doubles. And again, right, this takes us back to fluency. People are always asking, like, where's the fluency practice in Reveal? It's right here, right? It may not be like facts or
Practice page,
flashcards,
right.
exactly, but doing this work is practicing their number fluency.
And a lot of that comes in the number routines. So if you're routinely doing the number routines, there's practice there as well and connections.
Alrighty, so then here we see subtraction being modeled. And this is more for first grade, but there's this great context for learning activity that we've linked here and we'll show it to you. But if you want to do some number line work with your kids in kind of like a genuine, authentic
Context, right? A real
Exactly.
problem solving, like I need your help. We're doing this. And this is a unit actually that was written for context learning from anywhere from K to 2 or even 3rd grade. Like they don't say this is only 1, 2, or 3. If depending on who your students are, if they need it, it is absolutely appropriate to do something like this at the beginning of 2nd grade. If they're not understanding how to use the open number line because this goes from concrete to picture to abstract. And that's where it gets a little bit hard for people.
Right. I mean, so here they'll demonstrate it with cubes or blocks. But of course you can make the paper width or length, whatever it is that you want it to be, for them to use larger numbers. Right. So, it's linked here, the whole booklet. So if you wanted to see it, but, here you're developing the use of the open number line with the context of measuring for an art show. It's challenging for first grade students. They have to connect concrete to abstract, and it helps kids evolve from counting by 1 to using the 5 to 10 structure. So the explanation of the whole thing is here. Do we want to click on it, Carrie, and show them?
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay. What's nice is that when I've seen it done, it's I think a 7 to 14 day unit. You do not have to do all those days. You could do a few days of it. And especially with parent or teacher conferences coming up or like shows that you might have in the building, there's always artwork that you're using. You could actually say, I need help. We need to measure frames for your artwork. How are we going to do that? So now you're having them problem solving. It's a real life situation and they can measure first with cubes and counters in 2 different colors because you're preserving the 5, 10 structure. And then, what does that look like on a number line or an open number line? So this is a lovely, supplemental unit that you could do as much or as little as you want to help support the development of the open number line.
And all the explanation is here, like exactly what to do so that if you're interested, right, and like read through it, right? And they kind of show you here, right? Like this is the paper that their artwork is going to be on. This is the sign that goes underneath it. So ask the children to help you measure several sizes for the different kinds of art and the paper that has to go underneath it. And that of course becomes the blocks that they use for measuring.
And what's really important is that you have the 5, 10 structure, whether it's like, that you want to, I'm just using this as an example, they want to know like that it's 5 and 5 is 10 and then maybe 3 more. So you want to preserve the 5, 10 unit structure so they can think in chunks rather than 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right.
5. So that's why you use 2 different color cubes.
That's the goal. That's how you're
Yeah.
moving them. So the whole thing is here, and what I am trying to scroll to so that you can see at the end is that all of the, right, like all of the resources that you need to actually do it if you want, is here, right? So we measured the short side, the long side, right? And then the measurements and the totals. And
And then there's some games that are actually practice you jumping to landmark numbers or by landmark numbers that are in there.
but, oh, bless you. But then you can see here, right, that there is, like, now that they've done that work, like, they can practice doing this. And of course, right, these numbers are chosen strategically. But it's just, it's something in case you're interested in using it, and we can share, we'll share the slideshow with you so that you have access to that resource. And then there's more information. And then here we are at grade 2, right? And you can see, right, just I think what Amanda was talking about, like, where would this go on this number line, right? Which benchmark is each closest to? Is 25 closer to 50? Is 83 closer, you know,
And
where,
if you're putting it in the middle, why are you saying that?
right?
It's all about number relationships.
And then, of course, it becomes a strategy for kids when they have to figure out, well, where would 26 go, right? Where would 10 go? So that kind of practice gives them some tools for other numbers when they're doing this kind of work.
And interestingly enough about that, when you're going from first grade to second grade, and you might have a student who can understand that where 99 goes on a number line, or where, 75 goes on a number line, but if you ask them where 29 goes, they have no idea. Some of them,
Some
because
of
they
them.
just can't understand that unit getting smaller. And so to them, like anything over 50 is really large, so they know it's going to go far to the right on the number line. But something about 29, like, is very hard for them to understand. So that landmark work is really important to develop.
Absolutely. And, the other thing is that sometimes, when they're doing when they're using a number like 29, I don't know. I just lost my thought. I'm so sorry, because of course we
Okay.
had a video here and then like it wouldn't work, but
Is that the one with the car? I don't think that it's not important.
it'll come back to me. I don't know. I'm sorry. Here we go. So you can see here, they use, it won't let me make it bigger. Oh. But what I was hoping to show here is the number line, and then they use it to show the bar model work in second grade, right? So now relating the number line to a bar model as parts of the whole is also interesting. So Aria runs for 12 minutes, then she runs for 6 more minutes. How many minutes did she run, right? So starting at 12, adding 6 on, right? She ran, so they're showing like what it means,
What
right?
that part is. It's trying to
Exactly.
get part whole.
So 12 is the first part, 6 is the additional part. So altogether it's 18. Right? And
So
then,
that's how it starts in second grade, right? I think that's unit 5, Alyssa. I think that was the beginning of it.
right?
Yes.
And here you see it with the
cubes.
cubes as well.
Now, they
right?
don't have it do with the 5 and the 5 structure, but it's still similar because they are using
The 10.
Yeah.
Right? And what's interesting, right, is you can see here, this is the reinforcement, which is for kids who are struggling a little bit with that idea. And then it moves to just the bar model for the additional practice and the extend.
And then you have to also know with that one, it's a bit part whole-ish. At that point, at some point, you're going to want to introduce the open number line and show that you don't have to always start at 0, right? So there are different purposes. That was a bit more part whole. Whereas when you're using it to add and you're just introducing that idea that you don't, just because you're, you don't have to start at 0. If you're starting at 37, you could start at 37. Right.
Decomposing one addend to add. Right, so this is what Katie was talking about, 45 plus 27, breaking it into 20 plus 7, right? adding 20 to 45, and then adding 7 could be +5 +2, right? Just depending on where kids are in their development. But, right, we can see here that this would require regrouping. And so how is it that we're doing that on a number line?
And as you will see, we heard something at the A school, somebody was trying to get, no, so 20 plus 7, they could do jumps of 10 and 10 and 5 and 2, but going back to that idea of doing count arounds around the room, if they don't know how to count by tens from any number, then it's not going to be the most efficient strategy. So you have to do the developing that work along with them so that that way they can use the open number line efficiently.
So here it is again. Oh, and then here's the visual, the image there. Right, and here's the conversation that we just had of breaking it up. And you can see
Yep.
it, right? 45 plus 5 more, right? Here's the 5 plus the 20 plus the 2.
Which is totally valid. There are some kids who I always like to distinguish. They're the people who like to jump by landmark numbers, and there are people who like to get to
Two,
landmarks
yeah.
numbers first. And they usually are so distinct in what they like or don't like. Have that conversation. There are some people who cannot think of it until they get to the landmark number. Other people like myself, I like jumping by a landmark number. But it's just an interesting conversation to have with them, because when you look at those numbers, the 20, the 5, and the 2 are there. They're just in a different order.
Right. Again, and that's why making sure kids understand the commutative property of addition is really important. And then here it is broken as 20 plus 7, right? And here's, right, all these other ways. And then we see it there as well. So, right, and this is the goal here now, is to move them away from the number line, right? Eventually, like, I think it was
Mhm.
Amanda who was saying, like, we want to move them from counting
By one.
by 1 and on the number line. But there it is. Adjusting add-ins.
So you
to
see,
add-
obviously, that unit 5 is heavy hitter with using it in second grade.
Yeah. We're getting close to time, so like, I don't want to keep talking. I just, but like, what are your thoughts? Like, was there something you heard today that like was helpful? Is there something more that you think you would like, or
Did this pose more questions for
Yeah,
you, or
that
did
we
make
could-
you understand you need more support?
right?
Because it's hard to do that in an hour. So how can we support you from here?
I liked oh, the lights just went off. I like how you mentioned like showing the students the different ways of jumping on the number line like above each other. That I feel like will be really helpful because visually being able to see it on the same number line, I feel like will help students make the connection that it is a different way to solve the problem, but like we can talk about which way is more efficient. And even for my students who may struggle a little bit more in math, it's nice to see that they have options. And even if they don't like the more efficient way, there's still an option that works for them. So I thought that that was really helpful.
Exactly. I think that's a different color, make that jump a different color. And then what do you notice? What's the same? What's different? My favorite 2 questions, right? 3
And
questions.
Yeah, and you can, and different kids could do it different ways,
Right.
and you can still show it, right? So you're making room for lots of different strategies, which is important. Katie, how about you?
Yeah, I think that what you were saying about bridging that gap between the concrete number line to the open number line is like a real crux of first grade to second grade. The concepts of the numbers, thinking about them as a bunch of ones, to then thinking about jumping on a number line where you are kind of in charge of the units, be that ones or tens. I think that that's a really great extension of the place value work that we start this year. I'm a big fan of, if it's presented with one visual in the book, supplementing with also a number line or also a 10 frame to just sort of like continue connecting all of the visuals, and to just bring them all together to continue thinking about like what is similar about a 10 frame and a number line and base 10 blocks, like just like to connect all of those visual concretes together, I think is really powerful.
Making those connections real and like you always say is thicker, making those lines thicker for
Yeah.
the connections, because sometimes there is no connection. They're like, what does that line with those hops have anything to do with a tens frame?
Right.
You know, they
Yeah.
don't know that, you know?
And the more exposure you have to different models and different strategies, then the bigger their toolkit becomes when they're solving problems,
I
right?
don't know if any of you ever work with these, but I'm gonna, hurt somebody, but the bead string is a fantastic model. It's extension rec and rec, but now it goes to 100. You could put this on a table and then you could actually make the hops above it and
Right.
really in the show what the hops are. And this is basically measuring for the art show in a form that's
Right.
already made.
Right.
I have a couple of these here. If you wanted to try that work, then we could, that's something we can explore as well for students who really need to connect the concrete, the more abstract.
So we'll stop our share here and just, kind of check in with you. So like, hopefully that this was helpful and the information here, even if it wasn't brand new, like
Mhm.
hopefully it validated and kind of helped
Solidify.
Yeah,
what you
absolutely.
what you're already doing.
that and that are important. Especially what was nice is that we kind of saw how the work that Katie and Amanda are doing is going to support the second grade and the things that like Alyssa and second graders are doing, helping them with strategy and flexible thinking and fluency and numeracy.
And I can't stress enough for both grades, working on counting by tens and getting to tens.
Yeah, those
Those,
counter
those concepts will help them in multiplication and division and everywhere else. So those are the two things to keep in mind. And that's what's going to help them use that model more efficiently.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
All righty, guys. Thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah,
And we hope you have a great rest of your week.
bye.
Thank you.
All righty, bye, guys.
Yeah.